Hello, peeps and creeps, and welcome to Fright Club. I'm Gav, he's Danny,
Hello.
and we're the Fright Club NI, and this is a brand new episode of Monday Night Frights, and tonight we're talking about the 1931 classic, Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
It's moving. It's alive. It's alive. It's moving. It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. Oh, in the name of God. Now I know what it feels like to be God.
Well, Danny, we're back for episode 3.2, and of course we're talking about the classic Frankenstein.
Yes.
Frankenstein.
Oh.
I know.
Man,
This is... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I love the book. We know how much I love the book because we have mentioned it many, many times before.
Obviously.
It's one of my favorite books ever. But did you know that this was my very first viewing of the original Frankenstein?
I did not know that.
I
was unaware of that. We've had this film on the list for quite a while because, as you said, we mentioned it quite a bit in previous episodes, and I think specifically the Dracula episode we talked about it, and a little bit on the Pan's Labyrinth episode as well, which you can go back on the YouTube channel and check, because obviously there was a bit of a Del Toro connection there. We'll get into that later. But yeah, amazing. I can't believe you haven't seen this movie.
I honestly,
it's a classic.
To be honest, actually, the only other Universal monster movie I had seen before this is Creature from the Black Lagoon. I've not seen any of the other ones. So this is now my second Universal monster movie. I do intend to work through the rest of them and then watch Monster Squad.
Obviously.
Yeah, man, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I think what I loved about it was just how like panto-y and campy it was. It's so ridiculous. And the kind of watered down narrative of the original story, you know, it doesn't have everything that the book has. It's a very, very watered down narrative. But it's still great. It's a lot of fun. And, you know, I can maybe understand like way back when it was first made, people might have been a bit like, ooh, spoopy. But watching it now, you're just like, fuck, this is silly. This is so silly, but wonderful.
It is a bit silly. It's not scary.
No.
But, you know, watching it, there's still creepy parts in it, and you can see the bits that would have scared audiences back then. And I think some of the sequels are a lot more sillier than this one. I still think this holds up quite well in terms of being quite dark and gothic. Although there is sort of kind of panto bits in it a little bit. It still holds up.
Baron Frankenstein cracked me up.
Oh, I
was pissing myself laughing at him. Like, he is some character.
I know.
I reckon he must have been drunk the whole time because everyone else was playing it quite serious.
Absolutely.
And then he's just like, get the servants champagne because they can't have that old wine.
Don't waste the wine on them.
Don't waste the good stuff.
I know. Fucking scumbag. Like, but yeah, so I absolutely adore Frankenstein. Like, it's up there with Dracula in terms of like being, for me, the two most classic monsters ever created. I still lean towards Dracula a little bit just because of the whole vampire lore and the fact that it's kind of spread out into different parts of cinema.
Yeah.
But I just love Frankenstein. So 90 years old, this film is.
Yeah, mad.
Fuck me, that's crazy. Directed by the great James Whale. And obviously based on the novel by Mary Shelley. This film version is actually based on a play from 1927, which was based on the Mary Shelley novel. So that's why it's quite different, because obviously whenever it went to the stage play, they had to adapt it in a certain way to work for the theatre, and that's what this film is based on. It's based on the actual stage play version.
Just nice little moments from the original story, which again still has enough in it to hold what's so important about the original story, but also just moving it along nicely so that we can round off to the end without actually having the original book ending, because obviously this year ending is very much more like closed book, whereas the book itself is not. It's sort of open and leaves you wondering, well, have they disappeared, or is there something else going on?
What's happened? The book's great. Like, I actually only read the book for the first time last year, quite early last year, like January, February. was the first time I'd ever read the novel. I had it on my shelf for about 12 years. I have my copy here.
I was going to say, I do have obviously the one I showed during our when we were talking about Pan's Labyrinth, and I said about Del Toro, and obviously showed my
That's
one
gorgeous.
with the introduction. This edition, if you ever get a chance to pick up, and anybody gets a chance to pick up, or let us know in the comments if you have it. But I mean, it's got the forward by Del Toro. It's wonderfully illustrated. It's annotated. You've got all the kind of background history and stuff about like Shelley and how the story came about from them just kind of telling ghost stories. You know, her husband and who else was it?
Lord Byron.
Lord Byron, and they were just like playing about. They were just messing about, telling stories. And
the whole story, well, obviously she came up with the story first a little bit, you know, a couple of years before it was published. I think she started working on it when she was about 18 and it was published when she was 20, which was in 1818. And as the story goes, it happened because her and her husband Percy and Lord Byron had challenged each other to create this scary story and sort of scare each other with it. And she had come up with this amazing story about this scientist who created man.
It's absolutely incredible. And again, that edition of the book comes with all that, the background history and the letters and all the annotations along the side of the story, which is great. But I also have my original sixth form copy of the story, which again, when I first read it when I was in sixth form doing a module on Gothic literature, and we were discussing Frankenstein. It was the first time I read it, and I just remember I think I managed to read the whole thing in like a couple of nights because I was just glued to it. I was like, this is great. Like, I love all the themes in it, and I love the characterization, and you know, you feel so much. I think that's why I prefer Frankenstein over Dracula, is the empathy that you feel for the monster, because he's so misunderstood, and people just, because he's not a being of God, he's looked down upon by the rest of society. And yeah, I just love this book. I love it.
So I prefer the film of Frankenstein. I said this before in a previous episode. I prefer this film over the novel. And the reason why is because I saw the film first. You know, I saw this film when I was quite a young lad, and I saw different versions of Frankenstein over the years. You know, like the Kenneth Branagh one, which is a little bit closer to the book, and different versions and spin-offs, and the Monster Squad. You know, I just remember the big green monster, the big square head, and I remember watching the monsters on reruns when I was a younger chap, just loving the monsters and just loving that image of the Frankenstein monster. And also, before we go any further, Frankenstein is the scientist. He's the creator, but probably throughout this episode we'll probably refer to the monster as Frankenstein. So we don't want anyone in the comments being all like, "Oh, actually, the monster is not called Frankenstein. It's the doctor."
We're talking about that's going to be me the whole time.
I know.
I'm going to be like, I'm the schnotty guy who loves the book more than the film.
I know. Oh, have you read this?
I happen to have read all this and all the annotations.
No, we know this, but just for easiness, we'll call him the creature and monster, but we'll probably call him Frankenstein at some point as well.
And we'll refer to Frankenstein as Frankenstein.
Frankenstein, yes.
Frankenstein.
That will come out a lot during this episode.
Because we both love Young Frankenstein as well. Young Frankenstein is a fantastic adaptation of this story.
Amazing.
Absolutely unreal. I haven't watched that in Youngs. I must dig it out. So good.
I watched it a couple months ago with Jadine, and it's just, I love it so much.
No, holds up so well.
It's so good. So we'll talk about the novel a little bit actually first, because you said it was one of your favorite novels ever. It was published in 1818. Like, that's over 200 years ago. That's crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah, first publication 1818.
The difference, there is quite a lot of differences between the novel and this film version, which this film version kind of almost overtook.
Yeah, I feel like this is the kind of go-to in terms of narrative. Yeah. You know, there's always that kind of end with the villagers and the torches and pitchforks and stuff that is immediately iconic with any sort of Frankenstein story. Whereas in the book, it's completely different. Professor Frankenstein's off on a voyage, basically, to find the creature to kill him himself. It's not the village that go after him. It's actually Frankenstein himself. His mission becomes to destroy his creation, which we don't really see in this. We don't see in the film.
No, we don't see that really at all, and that's one of the kind of themes that they don't really touch on. Well, I suppose they do with the villagers, you know, the revenge theme, but
Yes.
In the book, it's it's him telling the story, isn't it, to the guy that's rescued him.
Yeah,
and he's explaining his story of how he created this monster. And you don't get that in the film at all. I don't know if there is any film, I think there's maybe one or two where they kind of bookend it with like a story type thing, but nothing that I've seen. I can't remember off the top of my head if there is a film that kind of bookends it that way. And there's quite a lot of other differences from the novel. Obviously, the creature's design.
yes.
You don't get an awful lot of description in the book.
No, but what you do get is that the creature he's meant to be ridiculously handsome. He's meant to be perfect. And the fact that he is so perfect is what makes him grotesque.
Yeah.
Whereas the films all kind of go with the let's make him look like loads of body parts sewn together and give him a big thick brow and let's have the bolts coming out the neck and just everything that is so what we imagine when you say Frankenstein, someone that's probably the first thing they think of. They don't think of a Promethean perfect creature.
Yeah.
You know.
The subtitle of the book is The Modern Prometheus. So I think in the novel as well, it's been, like I say, I've only read it once and it was last year, but he's got long hair in the novel.
Yeah.
Am I right?
He's got there's like there's some beautiful images and stuff, illustrations and stuff, but yeah, he's supposed to have like long, thick black hair, and he's toned and muscle and his skin's described. I think one of the things it says about his skin tone is like a yellowish. It's meant to be like, he's still a corpse. But it's like this, he's got like yellowish skin and thick black hair and, he's muscular. He is going to be this ideal of manliness. But in that, he's actually horrible. He's horrendous to look at because he's just unsightly.
He's kind of supposed to be like chiseled. I know in the book he's obviously very strong, which is something that they do in the film as well. But
he's got long hair and a tan. To quote another adaptation of Frankenstein, Rocky Horror. Yeah,
I know. Yeah, of course that's loosely based on Frankenstein too, to a certain extent. But I mean, somebody says Frankenstein, they immediately, that's the image. They immediately know the big square head, the bolts, the green face, the big broad shoulders, the big boots. Basically the Herman monster is kind of the image that is so iconic, and it's everyone knows it. Everyone knows it. You don't even have to have seen any of the films or read the book or anything, and you just know it instantly. And that was a creation of the director James Whale and Jack Pierce, the makeup artist. James Whale actually wasn't the original director attached to this film. I can't remember the first director's name. I think it was Richard somebody, but I've lost the name. But James Whale came on shortly after the original script was written because there was differences the director didn't want to do or something. I don't know. And then James Whale tweaked the script a little bit, and then he started doing sketches of what he thought the monster would look like, and he came up with this sort of square head type thing, and how the flat head would be a flat top because that's how you would get the brain in and out easier.
A little flap door.
Yeah, and obviously the bolts because that's the lightning would come
electricity,
down.
Yeah.
So that became iconic, and the makeup was created by Jack Pierce, who's like one of the greatest makeup artists ever. He helped to sort of invent that monster makeup way back in the late 20s and early 30s, and he worked on various Universal monster movies after this as well, so he's an absolute fucking legend. I love his work, and there's some great pictures online of him doing makeup to Boris Karloff in the chair, and Boris Karloff's like drinking a coffee and all and just sitting there, and he's just really skinny and he's got all this makeup half on his face and half off, and it's fucking brilliant.
Amazing. I do love the look in this film, and it's always really nice when you get the sort of like close-up shots of Boris Karloff. You kind of get like the head shots and the kind of close-ups of his hands and stuff, and there's just, it's not over the top. There's not actually quite a lot there, but the detail in it is really nice. And as you say, like it's the wee, like the way the hands are like sewn on. You've got those wee kind of like sew lines along here, and just even the wee bolts in the neck. And again, it's become such an iconic look for Frankenstein. It's the immediate thing that conjures in people's heads when they think Frankenstein. And every adaptation after that has based itself on that version. You know, it's maybe tweaked a bit more. Another, you know, Van Helsing, they made it a bit more kind of sci-fi, and Herman Munster obviously went cartoonish with that look, and
the big broad shoulders and the really sort of over the top lumbering walk. But there's been a few, obviously, like the Kenneth Branagh version starring Robert De Niro didn't go down that route. You know, he was very kind of human looking.
Yeah,
but he had all the stitches in his face, and then you could even go back to the Hammer horror version, The Curse of Frankenstein from the late 50s, which was the first colorized horror film ever, starring Christopher Lee.
Oh, Christopher Lee.
No, that was Prowse was quite a bit after that. Okay. But Christopher Lee played Frankenstein in that one, and his Frankenstein's, it is different. He's got the stitches, and he looks a wee bit the same, but not a square head. You know, his head's not the same, and I don't think he's got the bolts in his neck, but he does have that black blazer, I think, and he kind of walks, you know, like a zombie.
Yeah, still has that's broad. I think that's always the thing. Frankenstein will always be broad. He's a big, broad boy. He could play rugby.
Why? He'd be great.
He'd be an excellent rugby player.
He'd be a good fucking goalie. He'd be a good ice hockey goalie. But I think the Christopher Lee one, his skin's kind of more like a browny yellow rather than like the green that you always see in different versions later on. But that's a great movie. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out too.
I will definitely have to watch that. That's the thing. I think I'm trying to think of like Frankenstein movies, and I think the majority of movies I've seen that have Frankenstein in are movies where he's like another character within. So like Van Helsing, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Hotel Transylvania. You know, I don't think I've ever sat and probably. Have I seen the Branagh one? I think I might have seen the Branagh one when I was younger, but just I've kind of like pushed it away somewhere. And I did start watching the TV series with Sean Bean. Is it Sean? Oh, yeah, it's Sean Bean, isn't it?
Sure, it was filmed out in Kilgore.
Yeah, exactly. It was filmed down the road. But I think I only watched maybe like half the first episode and ended up falling asleep.
I know. There's loads of versions out there. So many that I can't even think of. But I'm going to try and work my way through a lot of the different versions out there. The Branagh one I saw when I was young, and I haven't really seen it in a long time. And I can't really remember if I enjoyed it that much. I just remember De Niro looking so different to what I thought Frankenstein's monster should have looked like.
I think, is that not one of the movies that De Niro kind of doesn't talk about a lot?
I don't know.
I think I read somewhere that he doesn't really like talking about Frankenstein. I think there's something about he didn't like the final cut. Yeah, I think he's not a fan.
I don't know.
From what I've read somewhere anyway. I could be wrong, but who knows? Who knows?
Who knows? But we can't really talk about Frankenstein without talking about Boris Karloff, you know, just so an absolute legend in cinema. He was a massive actor before he did this. So this was quite later on in his career, and he hadn't really had much recognition until he got this role, which is bizarre.
Yeah.
But he had done loads of films before this, and man, he does hardly anything. But I just fucking love it.
So little, and I love it's his wee like movements and stuff. You know, there's the kind of whole point that he's only like a day old at one point, and the way he kind of like fumbles and stumbles about, and the wee noises he makes. There's a point in it when he's sitting down with the wee girl and she hands him a flower, and he just kind of has this smile. He's like, ooh. He just makes like this little noise, and then he just smiles at her. And it's just wonderful. It's such a like. It is one of those moments where I'm kind of like, that is probably what the monster would be like in that situation. Just how there's a real innocence to the performance, and again, even when he like picks her up and she's obviously screaming and stuff, he's just kind of playing, and then this fear and all that comes out. It's such a minimal acting to it. There's no like there's not a great deal to it. But what he's doing is excellent in terms of how that character is being portrayed as a kind of innocent child turned victim of society.
Yeah, it's a great performance, and it's, as you say, there's very little. It doesn't look like he's doing a lot, but that's the art of performance. That's how you can do these kind of things. If you can do such an iconic performance like that without having to do little or no actual acting, like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But Karloff actually, had a bit of an influence in the makeup as well. I think it was his idea to add the eyelids, to make them a little bit come down a little bit further. And he took out he had a mouthpiece. He had a bit in his mouth that he took out as well, which made his jaw go on like that.
Oh, okay.
So it looks a bit more sunken. So I don't know if you remember that, but that was him he took that out to make his mouth look sunken. And it's an iconic piece of cinema, not just horror, but cinema in general. I think whenever you first see the monster, whenever he comes down those steps through the door, and then he turns around really slowly and reveals his look, that's one of the most iconic scenes in all of cinema.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And again, I knew, obviously going in, I'd seen all the pictures and stuff, so I knew what he was going to look like. But again, when he's coming down, and even if you know what he looks like, when you get that reveal, you're still kind of like, oh, it's Frankenstein. Like, that is Frankenstein's a monster, and yeah, it's powerful. It's such a stunning image. And again, it's so iconic in terms of not just horror cinema, but cinema in general.
Yeah.
Just a real iconic look.
I love the look as well, because it is iconic, but it's not as, like, a lot of the looks that came later kind of took this and went over the top with it, made the forehead really tall, or made the eyes really big, or the bolts really big, or maybe added in different things in the face. But this is the original look, and it's fucking awesome. I love it.
It's so good, man. It's so good. And everything about it, I think just a real understated performance, just really nice. And the fear and stuff that he shows when they're like coming at him with the torches. See, if they just hadn't come at him with the torches,
I know,
none of this would have happened. Like, there would have been no problems. Fritz was just being a dick.
I was going to say, yeah, Fritz was the first one who comes in the door.
Yeah.
Fritz, of course, who's the hunchback assistant, who, again, he isn't in the book. There's no assistant in the book. And later on, the assistant would become known as Igor. Which is weird, because, like, I don't know where the Igor or the Igor came from, because he was called Fritz in this original movie. But he's played by Dwight Fry, who was also Renfield in the original Dracula movie that was out just before this. He's fucking brilliant as Renfield.
Yeah, okay. As I said, the Universal monsters are going to get worked through, so I will see him in that. But yeah, again, great performance. I always feel like the Fritzes and Igors and all the assistants in these movies don't really get the credit they're due, because like there was a moment in this film where when they're first kind of getting prepped to bring the monster alive, and Dr. Frankenstein says, "Go and repair the electrodes," and it's like that assistant is bound to have some sort of engineering degree or something to know how the fuck to prepare an electrode. I don't know how to prepare an electrode, whereas they're always treated like dumb idiot assistants. It's just like, Igor, you fool. And it's like, no, well, he actually probably knows a good bit about science to be your assistant for a start. So lay off. But then when he started on Frankenstein on the monster, the creature, sorry, with the torch, I was like, you're being a dick. You leave him alone. You leave that monster alone.
Why did he have a torch when he was coming? A fire torch when he was coming through the fucking door? He didn't actually attack him. He just came through the door and was like, ooh. And then Frankenstein went mad. Or the monster went mad.
But the thing was, they were like, oh, get back. So what does Fritz do? He gets closer with it. I was like,
stupid
idiot.
I know. But he's great in it. And I think one of the best performances in it is Colin Clive as Henry Frankenstein. I mean, one of the most iconic scenes in the history of cinema is the creation scene, which again, isn't in the original novel, or it's not spoke about in the original novel, but they put it into the play originally, I think, and then also they took that from the play to put it into this film. And like pretty much every Frankenstein version that came after this has some sort of version of this scene, and it's unreal. Anything to do with a mad scientist, or which was kind of created in this film, or anything to do with a doctor who's, experimenting, is taken from this film, which is 90 years old.
Even we've spoken before in our Treehouse of Horror episode.
Aye.
It's heavily draws from this, heavily draws from this. And yeah, as you say, it's sort of another iconic moment that even in stuff that isn't based on Frankenstein, they still draw on this moment of mad scientist bringing his creation to life.
Mm-hmm. There's that bit where he raises him up, and he comes down and he sees his hands move, and he's like, "It's alive, it's alive, in the name of God. Now I know what it feels like to be God." Like, what a line that is! That's a fucking unreal line of dialogue, and it's it's something that is so powerful, and it kind of sums up one of the main themes in this whole entire film, which is about creation, the creation of man, and should anybody have the right to create man if they can, or should it just be up to God?
Yeah, that's it. Creationism and just acting God, and how that inevitably is bad, because you should fear God and you should fear religion, and science is bad and it's evil, and so is electricity. It's bad too.
It is, yeah.
And spectrums of light, apparently, according to this film, when he's like, when you thought that UV light was the most powerful, well, I found the light that created existence. I was like, fuck up.
Fuck up, you fucking ball bag.
You're crazy lights.
I know. But little known fact, in that scene, that whole creation scene was actually designed by a man called Kenneth Strickfaden, I think his surname is. And that kind of trope is now called the Strickfaden trope. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. I'm probably not. I'm probably British.
It sounds like a character name in the film.
Does,
Mr. Strickfaden.
Hello, Mr. Strickfaden.
Welcome to Baron Frankenstein's house.
I know. But apparently on the set, there is at least one original Tesla coil in there that was obviously made by Nikola Tesla. So that was I didn't know that. That was a pretty cool fact. So I hope it's true. It's probably false, but fuck it.
If anybody
pretend it's true anyway.
If anyone can confirm, put it in the comments. We would love to know.
Definitely do. But I mean, that whole scene is iconic. It's one of the great scenes of all time, and it's been copied thousands and thousands of times.
Oh yes.
Through horror, through science fiction, through other comedies, through all sorts of genres. But getting back to the novel and the differences between the novel and the book, the novel, it was probably one of the original science fiction novels.
Yeah.
Stroke horror novels. Obviously, it's gothic, but it helped to invent the genre of sci-fi horror. So
100%.
And this film as well is very much sci-fi horror as well, and I just love it. I love the opening scene because it opens up and it's so gothic and kind of dark.
It's when it's like panning across the funeral attendees.
Yeah.
And you kind of got like all these people sobbing and crying, and then there's just like this grim reaper with the sword, and you're a bit kind of like, oh, that's a little spooky. And then you realize it's actually just a statue over a grave. But I thought that was wonderful. I thought that was great. Just all these mourners, and then death, and then you get Fritz hiding behind the fence, being all like, meh, and Henry Frankenstein being like, be quiet, you fool.
Be quiet.
So good.
But I think it's fucking class, man. Like, because just what a way to open a film. I mean, that's not even the opening. The opening, we forgot to talk about the warning.
Man, which again referenced lovely thing that has just cemented itself in pop culture, and been referenced so many times and has gone on. I mean, Hitchcock did it and Simpsons did it. It's the warning. Yeah,
so back in 1931, the head of Universal felt that they needed to put a warning before this film when it aired in theaters and stuff. Carl Laemmle Jr. was the producer of the film, and he hired Edward Van Sloan is the actor who does it, who is actually Van Helsing from the Dracula film, which was previously out in the same year. And he does the warden, and he comes out and he warns him, and I just think it's fucking brilliant.
It's the end of it, just at the end, he's like, "You've been warned." I love that. I was like, "Oh, I've been warned."
I know, like. I just think it's genius, absolute genius. But they had to do it. They felt they had to do it because it was such a powerful film, and this film happened because of the success of Dracula, which was out in the same year, which completely, it turned Universal around, because I think they were in a bit of a doldrum at the minute, and they needed a big film to help them. So they did Dracula, and then they realized people fucking like horror movies, let's do Frankenstein. They did Frankenstein, and this film happened because of the success of Dracula. But it was actually banned in loads of countries because it was so scary, or it was so horrifying, I suppose, is a better word to use. It wasn't really.
Imagine being one of those, like one of the OG. I want to say video nasties, but it wouldn't even been video nasty back then. It was like, I know. It was real nasty,
I know. It was originally. It was I know, nasty. It was originally cut in. They're banned in so many countries, and then because they wanted a different version of it, so they had to actually go back and cut the film again. And it was actually banned in Ireland as well. Fucking.
It's because they had
God fear in Ireland.
Exactly, I was going to say they had men playing God. Can't be showing that stuff.
Oh no, blasphemous! No,
blasphemy! That is absolute blasphemy.
Science! Oh, Jesus,
with sort of thing. Down with that sort of thing.
Science doesn't exist. But yeah, so it was thought to be blasphemous whenever Colin Clive says that word. I now know how it feels to be God. He's basically saying, I am God. Although he's not, he's just saying, I'm a bit like God.
I'm a bit like God. I can do what he do, but I'm not him.
I can do the same sort of shit he does, but like I can't change fucking water into wine, Yeah. That's my next trick. We'll see.
Well. But as we learn, people who
some fish.
try to do that. He wants a whole load of bread.
I know.
Yeah, but I feel like people who do get offended by these sort of films, back then, even still now, there's still films that offend different sort of communities and stuff, and it's because they don't fully understand the context of the story. So obviously the context of this is that it's bad. It's actually a bad thing to play God, and you will get your comeuppance. But they judge the book by its cover. They don't actually go in and watch the film first and learn that the whole point of this is religion ultimately will win.
Yeah. But I mean, I think they had to cut that line, or they had to edit it or something. They had to cut a couple of scenes later on in the film. We'll get into it now, but the scene with the little girl, being drowned, that was cut from the original version in a lot of countries, and was only restored years later. Which seems really silly now, but back in the early the early 30s and stuff, these kind of films weren't widely seen, and it really was horrifying for people.
Because again, you don't actually see, the only time you see her go in the water is when he first throws her in, and then the next shot is of him with her back to her, and it's just him in the shot, and you kind of hear splashing, but you don't actually see it.
No, you don't.
Whereas if a film today would 100% show that child floating face down in the water,
Yeah, but I think that actually works better whenever you see the father walking through the village, which is fucking terrifying.
Man,
that really scene.
It's because again, everything kind of before that has been really happy and joyous and silly and campy, and then it's the bit where he walks past like a group of children who are like saying they're like Marie, is it Marie or Maria? I watched this today and it's already gone out of my head.
Maria, I think.
Yeah, and they're just like saying her name, and then everybody just bursts into tears, and it's just like, that's horrific. Like that's grim as hell.
Yeah, it's just because obviously it's like the wedding, isn't it? The wedding reception.
Mm-hmm.
People are partying, and the father's just walking through. The wee girl's just sort of dripped over the father's arms, and it's the look on his face is just terrifying. But actually, that split second where he picks the girl up and throws her in, that's the moment that was cut from a lot of the versions of the movie, because that was a man killing a child, which was had never been seen before, I don't think. Yeah.
But again, such an important part to the story, it's very clear that it is an accident. He's that innocent, he doesn't realize what he's doing, he just assumes, like the flowers, she's going to float.
Exactly.
And it's such an important part of the story, so to cut that is almost it's a loss to the narrative. And it's good now that we can understand that one, it's not real, and it's not going to, it's not going to offend us as easily, and also that we get the full story, we get that complete narrative.
I mean, it still works anyway because it's your mind's going to go there, and you're going to assume that had they cut away after he threw the flowers in, and then you see the child later, you just sort of would have assumed anyway. But him picking the girl up and throwing her in, I think
it's the way his performance in that moment is, again, it's such a, as I said before, it's such a nice kind of childish moment from him. Like, yes, she's obviously screaming because she's scared, and she says, "Oh, you're hurting me," but he doesn't really understand that. He hasn't got a concept of hurt and pain yet. It's something he then learns at the hands of the villagers. And again, without that scene, you lose all that.
And that's another difference as well from the novel, is that he speaks in the novel, isn't he? He's quite he's intelligent in the novel. He's able to learn languages, and he can communicate, and he doesn't really do that in this film at all. He does it in The Bride of Frankenstein, where he's able to speak in that. But I prefer it when he doesn't speak, so I think it works better in this that he didn't actually speak.
I think because in the original story, he's speaking with a blind person.
Which is what happens in that actually happened. That's the scene in Bride of Frankenstein, where he goes into a hut for refuge, and there's a man there, and it's an old man, and he's a blind man, and they start speaking, and I think he actually smokes a cigarette as well, which is a bit strange, but it's quite funny. It's the Bride of Frankenstein's definitely leans into the comedy aspect a little bit more than this one, but I just thought it was bizarre that he smoked a cigarette and
does he say the brand and all as well?
I can't remember. I can't actually remember, but I definitely know he smokes a cigarette, and he speaks.
I'm a Marlboro man.
I know. Camel or something, I don't know. But so we spoke a little bit about Dracula as well. I think you have to always speak about Dracula when you talk about Frankenstein, because they came out in the same year. They're sort of kind of linked together almost, and they always have been. But originally, before James Whale came on to the project, and before the project really got kicked off, I think Bela Lugosi was supposed to play Frankenstein, which to me just would not have worked. However, I was reading a little bit about it, and in the original script, the original monster wasn't supposed to be how Karloff's monster ended up to be like, so Lugosi wouldn't have been playing the same type of big lumbering type of monster. And then Lugosi didn't want to do it because he felt that he was I think the idea is that he felt like he was a better actor and should have been able to speak and say things, and
above all that,
a little bit above it, not in the terms of obviously he played Dracula and he did Dracula on stage, but I think he felt under makeup and not being able to speak. You could have got anyone to do that role essentially. And anyway, the thing was he didn't do it. The original director dropped out, and then James Whale came on, and that's whenever he designed the sketch of the monster and he got Karloff involved, and everyone got involved after that, and we got this unreal film that has stood the test of time for 90 years.
Unreal. Again, as I said, even watching it now, hadn't seen it before, coming into it today, I loved it. And I think it's because, yes, I do have a love for the book and I have a love for the characters, but even at that, it's so fun. It's such a fun watch, and the performances, whilst like we said, some of them are fantastic, and it's the little details of the characters. But even Baron Frankenstein, just absolute silly pantomime of character. But he adds to it. He brings something different to it that is refreshing, and the fact that he kind of gets to close off the film with the final line just adds to that kind of almost pantomime staginess of it, which I love. I would love to see this. I would love to see it as a stage play. I think it was great fun.
I've seen the play on TV, like I think last year during the first lockdown, the BBC or the National Theatre or something did something online where they showed a version of it. I think Benedict Cumberbatch was in it, and Johnny Lee Miller. They played dual roles, the Professor and the Monster. Yeah. So, and I seen a part of that, and it was unreal. Like, I think to see it on stage would just be mind blowing.
I would love that, and I would 100% go. Well, we have a Fright Club day out when the lockdown's over, and
fingers crossed,
have a wee day out to the theatre to see Frankenstein if it's on. They are actually, I saw Rocky Horror is coming back to the Grand Opera House when it's open again, so we might get to see an adaptation of Frankenstein.
Yeah, I haven't seen it on stage. I know Janine's seen it. I know you've seen it as well.
I've seen it. Man, I love Rocky Horror so much. I love it so much, man.
Somebody once told me you like get the old fishnets on, Danny.
One time.
I'm still waiting on the picture.
Man, it was such good crack. I'll have to send it your way, and you can put it on the Fright page.
Is there definitely pictures?
Oh yeah, I've got pictures. Yeah,
we'll have to get up there.
I'll have to fire it over to you. I loved being Frankenfurter. What a character! What an absolute character! What an absolute interpretation of Dr. Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenfurter.
Just a mad old film, like just crazy.
Insane. If you would like us to cover Rocky Horror Picture Show, let us know in the comments. Because I would happily talk about it.
I would happily do it as well.
So good.
It's a mad old film, like it's funny.
Excellent.
But we'll talk a little bit about, we mentioned briefly about the theme of creation. This obviously it's a sort of gothic science fiction movie, but there is kind of like a weird sort of romance to it as well. Like obviously there's the physical romance between Frankenstein and Dr. Frankenstein and his fiance, but then there's kind of the weird romance between him and the creature as well, which gets explored a little bit in other adaptations more so than this one. But in the book, Frankenstein wants to kill the monster because he's gone. He's abandoned his own creation.
Yeah, he's killed. He's killed he's
killed his family as well, isn't that right?
He kills the fiance. He kills Elizabeth in the book, because Frankenstein killed his love. He was meant to make him a partner, and then Dr. Frankenstein basically was like, "Nah, I can't bring another one of you in the world. Fuck that." So Frankenstein's monster kills Elizabeth, and then he runs off, and that's why Dr. Frankenstein is pursuing him. Then is because like, I need to kill this motherfucker. Whereas in this, yes, Frankenstein's monster attacks Elizabeth, but he doesn't kill her. He's just attacking her out of like, I assume like a sense of rage at how he's being treated by the society around him. But he doesn't actually. The only person he kills, and it's an accident, is the wee girl.
Well, no, he kills Fritz, doesn't he?
Does he kill?
He kills the other doctor as well.
Oh yeah.
What's the other doctor? Edward Van Sloan plays.
It's not even. You know what?
Dr. Holden or Holden? I don't know.
Holden, something like that.
Well, I don't think you see that death. You definitely see Fritz's death.
Yeah.
He hangs him, doesn't he?
Yeah, Fritz deserves it though. He's been a dick. You know what?
That wee dick.
Like the creature only kills people who deserves it. Like the wee girl didn't deserve it, but that was an accident. The ones where he is intentionally doing it is because the people actually deserve it. And Dr. Reinhardt, maybe? Reinhardt?
Who's that?
The one...
other doctor, sorry.
The teacher.
I don't remember his name.
He's got like a weird Irishy, Scottishy...
He's Welsh.
Accent. Oh, is he meant to be Welsh?
He's actually Welsh. He's one of the Valleys.
Okay. Because I was kind of wondering, I was like, what accent is that?
I think he's Welsh. He could be Scottish, actually. No, I'm pretty sure he's Welsh.
It's one of those ones that when I was watching, I was like, are you trying to be Scottish? Are you trying to be Irish? And you're kind of getting somewhere in the middle. But yeah, like, he wasn't a bad character, but you could also tell, like, he just wanted to, like, do sciencey stuff. And science is bad.
Science is bad.
So... yeah, no, I definitely, I feel Frankenstein's monster. I feel like he didn't deserve in any adaptation. He never deserves what he gets. He deserves more. He deserves the world. He just wants to get laid. That's the end of the day. That's what he wants.
Just give him a bit of fucking Franken pussy or something. I don't know.
Frankenpuss.
I say Frankenhooker. Have you ever seen that? Maybe.
No.
We'll have to. I seen it years ago, but I have to rewatch it. It's a weird comedy parody of Frankenstein called Frankenhooker. Check it out if you haven't seen it. But, yeah, obviously in all the adaptations of Frankenstein, the main theme outside of creation is the fact that is he the monster or is the creator the monster, who the man who created him? Because in this one, Colin Clive, who plays Henry Frankenstein, helps the villagers chase him, but he doesn't tell them that he's the, it's his fault who created this man or monster. So you've kind of got that weird thing where I know he's trying to find him because he wants to stop him and stuff, but if they found out that it was actually his fault, maybe they would stop and go, hang on, maybe we should be fucking going after you and beating the shit out of you instead of this poor man who's man-stroke monster who doesn't know any better. And that's one of the main themes through all these adaptations is, fear and ignorance of people. And it's funny because when I rewatched it and the man comes into the villagers with his dead child in his arms, and then I think he sees the mayor and he's like, what's this? And he's like, my daughter's been murdered. And he's like, right, I promise to bring justice to your daughter. And then like the next scene, it's just like all the villagers out with the fucking
they're just ready to go. They're like, rah, rah, rah.
Yeah, and the fires and stuff. And it's like this film didn't just help invent sci-fi horror. It invented the mad scientist trope. It invented the monster trope.
Vengeful villager trope.
It invented the vengeful villagers trope, who just on a whim just all come together without any evidence or anything, and they just go, we're just going to kill. See that person that's different. See that person who's slightly different than us, who's got a different colour of skin, and doesn't speak our same language. We're going to kill that cunt.
They're going to kill him.
Because he's a kitty killer.
He's a bad man. Now, to be fair, he did kill the child, so
he did kill the child.
Excuse.
But they should follow due procedure and at least ask him what happened first. Yeah. Now, I know he could lie because there's no other witnesses, but they still need due process. You can't just kill people.
The thing is, the father of the child didn't see the guy. Didn't see him, so he
because he left his child unattended.
Yeah, he was an awful parent. He was like, see you later, love.
Just you hang out with the cat.
See that lake there? That's obviously very deep. Go ahead and play there. But when he comes back from his little job, whatever he was doing, and he finds that his daughter's dead and obviously floating in the lake, maybe she just fell in. Like, why did he?
Yeah, how does he know someone's murdered? Yeah,
I know. And how do they know that it's this man-stroke monster? It could have been fucking anyone. So there's a lot of plot holes there. And
blame the out-of-town weirdo.
Yeah,
blame the out-of-town weirdo.
100%. That strange man with the square head
and the bolts in his neck.
It's got to be him, But yeah,
big murderous looking fellow. Well, I suppose because the only other thing we know about it is when the brain they steal is from someone with violent tendencies, which is the only reason that Dr. Frankenstein decides that he's going to actually try and get rid of the monster. That is the only motivation he has for getting rid of the monster in this movie. Before he obviously attacks his fiance, is that the other doctor's like, oh, the brain that was stolen was from somebody with violent tendencies. So Frankenstein's like, oh, my life's work, I better just fuck it, right? I just better destroy this, throw it in the bin.
Like, as if that would make a difference,
Yeah.
Like, he was a criminal. So, but earlier on, he wanted to cut down the body of the man hanging.
Yeah.
So, like, obviously he was a criminal too. And like, you've dug up a dead body, so you're a criminal. So, like, what's the connections there? And it's very, very bizarre. But Dr. Frankenstein is a horrible human being. I know he's got ambitions and he wants to change the world, but what he does to get there is fucking terrible.
Yeah, exactly. He's a bad egg.
I just love that scene where Fritz is in like the lab and he's like, normal brain. Ooh! And then he drops it and he's like, ooh, abnormal brain. Yeah. I better take this, and it shows you a close up of the word abnormal just so that we know, he's got the brain of an abnormal human being, the criminal, and he's going to turn out to be a bad man.
Bad egg.
But a bad egg, bad egg. So, but so obviously, the sort of fear and ignorance is a major theme. We talked a little bit about innocence of the monster himself. He's very childlike. He's a newborn.
Yeah. And
he's never experienced life before. There's a great line in this, and it's one of my favorite lines in the film, where he says that body is not dead. It has never lived. And that just gave me goosebumps, man, when he said that, because it was just like, fuck yeah, that's true. And it's very reminiscent of a line from The Matrix years and years and years later, where whenever Neo opens his eyes for the first time, I suppose, and he's like, oh, my eyes, why are they sore or something? And he's like, because you've never used them before. This is your first time opening your eyes, even though you're a grown man. You know, you've been a robot, you've been a pawn in this system, and it just reminded me of that line from The Matrix as well. And you know, years later, they're still fucking stealing
Still
concepts.
that sort of influence, yeah. The dialogue, yeah, definitely. Dr. Frankenstein gets some of the best dialogue. He kind of gets those like epic moments, epic monologue moments where he kind of gets to say some real badass sciencey stuff. But Baron Frankenstein still gets the best line. He still gets all the cheeky bastard lines.
That servant line killed me. Like,
man, the servant line kills me. Where he's like, "Give them the champagne. That's all they're worth." And sitting with he's definitely like on the opiates. He's got like that big pipe, and I'm like, "That's an opiate pipe." Like 100%. Sitting with his wee hat on.
He's off his tits. Definitely off his tits.
Sitting in his manor, smoking opiates and drinking fine wine.
I know. But the line about the servants, you know, don't waste it on them was great. And the male servant was just like, aye, whatever, aye. Come
it's
on,
the one I love when they're going along. All the servants go to House Frankenstein, and all the other girls take like a wee sip, but the last maid downs the whole thing.
I know. She said enough.
Touches. Yeah.
She's just like, fuck this, my chef's over. I'm gonna go and get pished.
There's fantastic. There's wee character bits throughout this film as well that you see from wee people in the background, and all I love the costumes in the village scene when it's going through the party and they're all wearing their lederhosen and stuff, and it's a wonderful. It would be lovely if they did, like, I don't know if they have ever done like a colorized version of this, but you can imagine how bright, and I imagine it would look pure Burtony as fuck. There's just bright colors.
There's colorized pictures. I don't think there's ever been like a film version. I know you can see colorized pictures of Karloff as the original monster, but and Karloff played him again, obviously in Bride, and I think he played him in a couple other versions as well. Maybe I could be wrong there. Maybe the son of Frankenstein, but no, I like the black and white, man. I don't like colorized stuff at all.
I know, I can appreciate. I do love black and white, but sometimes you just wonder, you're like, what would this look like in color? And I imagine that street party scene would just look so nice and vibrant, and you know, all the reds and the greens. And
it's weird because you think of Frankenstein's monster, you always think, oh, he's green, but I mean, he wasn't green. Like I'm pretty sure it was more of like a yellowy type, like grey. I could be wrong there as well, but thinking back on a lot of those black and white films from back in the day, and even TV shows, to make something look a certain color, they had to put different colors on you. So let me think, what did I see the other day? I think it was the monsters, actually. Herman Munster's face is actually blue, but you just assume it's green because that they have to put blue makeup on because it's black and white. It makes it look kind of green, I suppose, even though it's grey. And I assume the same happened with this. I'm pretty sure it was originally like a yellowy grey, and then like there was a blue hue. Yeah, we got it in there somewhere.
This is you playing Fright Club bingo. Check your cards.
The blue hue. I'm pretty sure as the end makeup there was like a blue put over the top of it to give it that kind of effect. But yeah, it wasn't till later adaptations where the face was fully green whenever it was colorized and stuff. So
nice.
I just think that's fucking awesome. I think that's cool.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, amazing. Love the movie. I can't believe you only seen it for the first time.
Man, I loved it, and as I say, I will be working through the fun I had with that, and I love Creature from the Black Lagoon as well. So I must work my way through the Universal monsters.
I've seen them all at least once. I've seen Dracula a few times and Frankenstein a few times. Invisible Man's another great adaptation, which again was directed by James Whale. I think it's a really, really good film. Like there's a lot going on there that, you know, we could talk about, but we're not going to do that one because we talked about Lee Whannell's version of it. But Bride of Frankenstein's good as well. A lot of people prefer Bride of Frankenstein to this. I don't. I think the Bride sequel. I love Elsa Gladchester, who plays the bride. She's iconic too, you know, with the big wig and the lightning bolts. But I think it veers off into sort of comedy a little bit. You know, that's the one where Dr. Pretorius is in, which we spoke about, who looked like Monty Burns. Yes. He's really over the top, and there's weird things happening in it, so it's definitely more comedy, but it's still a fantastic film, and you know, it looks gorgeous. Like I think this film looks gorgeous too. Like I really love those first couple of scenes in the graveyard, and very gothic, and you see the statue of death, and then you've got all the crosses in the background, and they just make it look really, really beautiful.
It's wonderful, and even the lab as well. The lab's so well done up, and the village, the town square is amazing looking, and yeah, lovely set pieces. Absolutely lovely set pieces.
One of the most iconic films of all time. It spawned one of the greatest characters of all time in cinema, and we briefly spoke about sequels. There's loads of sequels, loads of spin-offs. There was different versions of this character in different other people's films, like Van Helsing and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and Monster Squad and all that sort of stuff. But he is coming back. There is going to be a version of Frankenstein coming soon. Ooh. At the minute, I think James Wan is involved with it. I know Blumhouse is involved somehow as well. There hasn't been a lot said about it. I know James Wan has been involved with it somehow. I don't know if he's writing a script or whatever. But not that long ago, Mr. Del Toro was very close to making a Frankenstein version. I think it was about 2006 or 7 or something. I'm not sure of the year, but I think there was a script written, and he was attached to it. And we spoke about it briefly in the Pan's Labyrinth episode. That's a film I really want to see. I want to see Del Toro do Frankenstein.
Just anything Del Toro does, anything he kind of puts his hand to, I'm going to watch. Even like Pacific Rim. Not the greatest movies, but I still love them because robots versus monsters, what's not to love? The stories, meh, but fight scenes, eh. And the designs, I love all the designs and stuff, but I would absolutely love to see Del Toro's take on Frankenstein. I imagine it would be an absolute stunner of a film.
I just think it would be gorgeous, and I think it's for me. If you were to say you can pick one director to make any film of your choice, I would say Del Toro Frankenstein movie would definitely be up there in the top 3 or top 5. There's a few other things I would want other people to do as well, but I think that would definitely be up there. So, wow. I just love to see it. It's not going to happen, but Frankenstein is coming back. Frankie will be back on our screen soon.
Frankie boy's going to show us how it's done.
Yes, he's coming back. He's going to be all fucking wearing earphones and all, and fucking Converse.
Making TikToks.
TikToks. Doing the dab and all.
Big Frankenstein doing just a big slow dab.
I know. Fucking yes. No, I'm super excited. I can't wait to see him back. Love Frankenstein. Yes. Frankenstein's monster.
Frankenstein's monster.
For those, he's actually called the monster.
Haven't you read the book?
You haven't obviously read the book. Well, I have, so fuck you. But anyway, yeah, love Frankenstein. Leave any comments you want in the comment section if you're a fan of Frankenstein. Obviously you are, because everyone is.
And remember to like, comment, and subscribe.
Share, subscribe, like.
All the buttons. Hit them all.
The buttons.
Every single one of them.
There's a bell there somewhere. Hit the bell.
Icon. Get notified when we post our Monday Night Frights.
Every Monday at 9 p.m.
Yes. And
please tell your horror pals about us. Please keep supporting Fright Club and we don't make any money at this. The only money we make is from the t-shirts.
And patches.
The patches. So
that's right. We still have patches.
www.thefrightclubni.com. Hit that store button and buy a t-shirt or the t-shirt and patch combo, which is also available on there. As always, follow us on Twitter at the Fright Club NI and on Instagram at the Fright Club NI, and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you like what we're doing. But keep supporting us because we love doing this and it's a bit of crack. So hopefully you listen to us every Monday. So but hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll be back next Monday at 9 p.m. Leave all your comments in the comment section below, and thanks for the support, guys. All the best. Take care.
Bye.